UVCE Chronicles, sing it loud. Echoes of our past, we're proud. From the heart of Bangalore to the world we soar.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of UVCE Chronicles. I am Aditya Pattavadanam, a second year electronics and communication student, and today we have a very distinguished alumnus with us, Mr. Ashwin Rangan. So, sir, at UVC Chronicles, we believe that nothing is better than a first hand introduction from the guest. So, can you please give us a first hand introduction of yourself?
Well, certainly. My name is Ashwin Rangan, as you rightly said. That's the name that I go by now. Back at the time when I was in UVC, which is 1977 through 5 years to graduate in 1982, the name that I went by at the time was Ashwini Kumar. When I naturalized as a US citizen, my last name is rather lengthy. It's Venkatarangan. So I shortened the name to Ashwin Rangan. I am born in Bangalore, but brought up in East Africa primarily. I came back to India to do my bachelor's and my master's, and it was my good fortune to be a part of UVC in Bangalore during my bachelor's time. I'm a graduate of mechanical engineering from UVC. I followed that up with a master's and MBA from IIM in Mumbai, and moved here to the US about 40 years ago, almost to the day 40 years ago.
Well, it's very interesting, sir. So, can you tell us what are your best memories that you have at UVC when you were studying?
Well, when I think of UVC, I entered UVC when I was 17 or 18 years of age. So, not quite mature, but enough confidence to think that I knew everything, and not realizing that things that I thought I knew were actually either fabricated or fictional. Over the next 5 years, I had the benefit of multiple brilliant professors who proceeded to school me in many different ways, some in the ways of the world, some with the wisdom that they had from experiences, and many in the subjects that I was interested in. So, in looking back, I would submit that those 5 years were not just formative in the form of me growing up and becoming a young man from being a precocious lad who thought he knew everything, but more importantly, so having the benefit of wisdom and words to guide me through the rest of my life since then. I look back with immense gratitude to a couple of professors who have subsequently become very good friends of mine.
That's a very beautiful answer, sir. So, can you tell us what were these wisdom words that enlightened you from professors of UEC?
Well, it's hard to compress 5 years of experience into a few words. What I can relate to you is some of my experiences, and through that, perhaps you'll be able to gauge some of the learnings that I benefited from. Quite early, I had realized that I had natural born leadership qualities. So, within a few short months of coming into UVC, not only was I a representative for the students, but quickly thereafter, I became the students' body president and led the student body in many different ways. Early on in my career, I realized that not only could I be a leader, but I had that talent to bring people together around common ideas and galvanize action. That led to a series of things. The Students' Union back in the day was kind of disorganized, so I helped to organize the Students' Union. I had numerous conversations with the then principal about things that needed to be done differently, perhaps better from certainly the student's viewpoint. And some of the suggestions that we had were implemented back then. Some of them were rejected because it was more chutzpah talking rather than experience or real outcomes talking. But through those conversations, I started to realize that it wasn't just me having ideas. They too had ideas, and some of them were quite good too. So I developed a healthy respect to listen to what they had to say before jumping into any specific conclusions. As we went through the 5 years, intersecting my pathway with people who had been to other parts of the world and had returned, I started to gain a perspective of those other parts of the world. We had the benefit of someone who had returned from the UK, having attended Cambridge. We also had someone who had been to Dartmouth in the United States and had come back. We had a couple of other professors who had been to other universities in the United States. So we started to hear about their experiences, and that started to shape the form that I wanted my mind to take and potentially my life journey to also take. And in having very deep conversations with them, I started to understand the ways of the world outside of India and outside of Africa, where I was brought up. So those were very formative years for me. And subsequently, at the end of 5 years, when I was accepted into the IIM in Mumbai, it was a matter of not only great pride for the school, but for several of the professors who had been instrumental in sort of fine-tuning my brain over the prior 5 years.
That's interesting, sir. So I went through a LinkedIn profile, and it is one of the most heavy resumes, like portfolios that I have ever come across in at least my years of being on LinkedIn. So I've observed that you have the name the Insightful CIO. So I wanted to ask you, what does a CIO do, and what does it take for a person to become a CIO?
Certainly. Well, the CIO three-letter acronym expands to Chief Information Officer or Chief Innovation Officer. And I have served in both capacities for the last roughly 30 years. Having a mechanical engineering background followed with an MBA, I really don't have any computer science background. So one of the first things that I would submit is that to be a good CIO, leave alone a sought after CIO, it is no doubt necessary to have a firm understanding of technologies which are enablers for the business. But it's more important to have a very thorough understanding of the business itself and the ability to learn about the business and the levers in the business which make the business move, whether from a revenue perspective or from a profitability perspective. So focusing on those two aspects, as in understanding business and understanding the enabling technologies, enough so that you can bridge those two and see how the one can benefit from the other and how enabling technologies can have a meaningful positive impact quickly, is the art of being a good CIO. Of course, this doesn't come naturally. It's something that you learn. I certainly had the benefit of being tutored by some of the best CIOs in business as I was growing up in my first 10 years of career. And subsequently, in 10 years' time, I had an opportunity to put my hand up and be considered to be the head of technology. And that was the beginning of my career as a CIO in about the 95 timeframe.
That's nice, sir. So you've held key roles as CIO of ICANN, Bank of America, and Walmart. What are the major differences in the technology for such diverse organizations?
Well, the answer to that is not technology, really. The way to think about it is, what do those brands aspire to be? and which technologies are applicable given their aspirations. So you pose the question with ICANN, Bank of America, and Walmart. Let's reverse the order and talk about it. When I was reached out to by Walmart to serve as CIO, the need of the hour at the time was to launch an online presence competing against Amazon with the same robustness that Amazon had established. They had had a running start, Amazon had, and Walmart was late to the party. So the key there was to understand the desire of the brand and what the brand wanted to present itself as online, and then to bring in the appropriate technologies so that it could scale given the weight of and the gravitas that Walmart as a brand already possessed. It was more a matter of conveying that brand presence and harnessing the momentum that it would likely have when once the brand presence had been established online. So it was very much about bringing what at the time was nascent e-commerce capabilities to one of the world's most well-known brands and expanding the footprint of merchandise beyond what is typically carried in a Walmart store. As big as it is, a Walmart store only carries about 150,000 SKUs. So with an online presence, imagery of merchandise is the only thing that you carry. You have the ability to have good relationships with third parties in the background for fulfillment. So our catalog size expanded by a factor of 10, so that within a year of starting Walmart.com, we were offering 1.5 million SKUs online. And we had the ability to fulfill those even at the peak demand season times between typically Thanksgiving and Christmas. Those last 4 or 5 weeks is when most retailers or e-tailers, as they're called, they turn the corner. So that was the need of the hour for Walmart. For Bank of America, it was a very different challenge. At the time I became CIO, their biggest drive was to create an iPhone presence when there was no iPhone. They knew that there was a new offering called an iPhone that would be presented to the world very shortly, but they didn't know what it would enable. Since I already lived on the West Coast, they sought me out, and I became this bi-coastal translator of the art of the possible and the engineering. And the rest is literally history with a group of, with a team of people, both based in North Carolina, Charlotte, where BFA is headquartered, and another team in Chicago. We created one of the earliest apps in the iTunes iStore, if not the earliest one. And when we launched it, the bank had the best ever customer acquisition rate in its history at a fraction of the cost that they previously used to have. So from the hundreds of dollars per customer, they went to tens of dollars overnight. And they far exceeded the goals that had been set in terms of new customer acquisition, given the novelty of both the offering, the ease of use of the offering, and the novelty of the platform itself. So it was a very much platform innovation engineering opportunity at BFA. And then with ICANN, it was a whole different story. ICANN, at the end of the day, is the purveyor of every top-level domain name in the world and every IP address in the world. Back at the time when I joined, there were 3 very specific challenges. One was ICANN had suffered through many cybersecurity challenges and therefore had to be fortified against bad actors. The second, ICANN was still a part of the Department of Commerce in the United States government, and there was a move afoot to separate it from the USG and make it into a standalone entity. And finally, there was a move to make available more top-level domain names from a tradition of having been 25 give or take domain names, which are generic top-level domain names. The intention was to make available over 1,000 new top-level domain names, which meant that all the systems that were internal to the company had to be scaled up. So cybersecurity, scaling, and separation from the USG were the three things that I had on my plate for probably the first 5 years, I would say.
Yes, sir. These are some of the most amazing answers that I've been hearing in the podcast right now. And your experiences at BFA or ICANN and Walmart have been so instrumental in what your career has, as well as these challenges were all very different. So it's very interesting to hear how different companies in different industries work and how ACIO responds to all of these. Yes, so next question is, can you share a unique leadership lesson from your time as chairman of the American Red Cross Society or the Chinmaya mission in Los Angeles?
Well, I certainly can. With the Chinmaya mission, this is it's a religious institution. I served there in my capacity as a board member for a couple of years, not as the chairperson. Not only is it a religious institution, it's also a philanthropy-oriented institution where the participants have to help enable the institution to survive. My God-given talent is the ability to speak before large audiences and help them understand whatever messaging is necessary. And that's the role that I primarily played there in two different formats. One is as an organization that's philanthropically run to raise money for Chinmaya Mission. The other, enabled by the local resident Swamiji, was to help the families that are part of the congregation understand what opportunities our children would have in the middle of the 20s. So I served there about 10 years ago when youngsters were still going through their school and aspiring to university graduation, etc. So I recall vividly doing lectures on which career pathways will offer the most opportunity if they were to focus 10 years to 15 years out. And it's gratifying to look back and see that many of the predictions that I made at the time have in fact come to fruition. And it was also an enabler for families. Traditionally, Indian families think of careers for their children as engineering, medicine, or law, or maybe accounting. But I took them way past those boundaries and said the real opportunities are going to be here, here, and here. And now it's quite common to see youngsters from that pedigree going into areas that are very unconventional relative to the four typical Indian outlook professions that are always held close to Indian hearts. So that was the role with Chinmaya Mission. With the Red Cross, it's a purely philanthropic organization, but it's also, while not categorized as a first responder, it is a first responder in that literally as families become aware of the fact that they are in desperate need for anything because of any reason, whether it's health related or natural disaster related, one of the first thoughts that comes to their mind is, could the Red Cross possibly help me here? So it's a deeply heartfelt reaction. It's an empathetic reaction that causes people to serve on the board of an organization like the American Red Cross or the Red Cross anywhere, the Indian Red Cross or any other Red Cross. So it was an opportunity to serve, and I found that to be gratifying in many ways. Again, I tend to think in very structured manners. So one of the things that I have left behind is a governance structure in the American Red Cross that continues to play a major role as they go from year to year with their rhythms. And it's led to very comfortable succession planning, to predictable outcomes so that there is no disruption to the institution and the mission when leadership changes occur, whether it's on the board or in the executive cadre of the American Red Cross. So things that I look back to with pride and honor.
Yes, sir. That's wonderful, and it's indeed, it's a very proud feeling to see that there was a UVC in as the chair of the Red Cross or has helped out in philanthropic organizations like this. It's just heartfelt to hear all of these, sir. So, sir, you are currently a professor at Chapman University. Would you enjoy most about teaching, and how do you incorporate your extensive corporate experience at the classroom?
Yeah, that's a very good question. At this age and this stage of my life, I consider myself to be, quote unquote, a wisdom worker. When you're early in career, if it were an Adrian who just graduated, for instance, you're propelled by a desire to climb up the ladder, to achieve, to showcase your achievements, to compete, to see how good you are. All of those are natural human tendencies. I have had the benefit of that for 40 years. Far be it from me to say that I have not fought the corporate wars, so to speak. I've done that. I've had my fair share of wins and losses. But on balance, I'd like to think that I have done more good than harm, and I have served more causes than detracted from them. Now that I'm past that stage, I'm at a point where I can afford to give back my time, my talent, and my wisdom. And being a professor is perhaps one of the most appropriate ways in which I can do that. There are others, of course. I'm also a coach, a professional coach to senior executives. That's another way to give back. I'm a mentor to students. That's yet another way to give back, and so on and so forth. But being a professor is a call of honor. When a university reaches out and asks whether you're willing to be a professor, it is all about what are you willing to share of yourself, because they're not seeking time alone. They're seeking a piece of your soul so that you can bring the subject matter to life and serve as a role model to the students. And in doing that, I chose to specifically only lecture to fully employed MBA students so that they've had the benefit of a few years of experience, and I have the ability to shape their thoughts so that they can make a more meaningful impact at their workplace. My years, decades of experience really enables me to be on the spot. We literally, the method of teaching that I use is to have them read The Economist and ask me questions that go beyond what is reported in the digest format on the front end of The Economist magazine, so that we can have a deep dive and talk about what is likely happening behind a specific company and its intentions. So whether it's an NVIDIA with their new GPUs, or it's a Qualcomm deciding to acquire Intel, or a Mars company that wants to do something, or Volkswagen saying we will not make electric cars. These are just examples of things that we just pick up. Every lecture is 3 hours long, so we're able to dissect whatever it is that we're talking to the finest of details while looking up material online and having a live conversation. So it's about training the minds of youngsters who have an aspiration to be in the corporate world making an impact, versus teaching some academic dry subject, if you will.
Right. That's a very interesting way to teach also in class, and I'm pretty sure that whoever is listening to this back in UEC will also be wondering if we could have you for a lecture as well. This would be very interesting to hear for 3 hours long and doing it in a very fun way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
That's the whole point, right? You want to have fun when you're learning,
right.
but nonetheless leave enough thought behind that there is some anchor point so that when you go back to work, you're able to relate what happened in class to what's happening at work, not just on hypothetical theoretical frameworks, but instead on real life examples.
Right. Yes, sir. So, this is one of my favorite questions. What personal achievement are you most proud of, and how does it connect with your professional journey?
Early on in my tenure here in the United States, I had the benefit of a few brilliant people who made it a point to make me their mentee. And I benefited hugely from their mentorship. Not only did it open my eyes to the art of the possible, but they taught me how to live. Um, Famously, one of them told me the difference between making a life and making a living. He said that what you get helps you to make a living. What you give actually makes your life. And that has been so instrumental in shaping my thinking that early on I decided to give back by way of mentoring. I've been doing that along with my wife for the last 25 years. We have a host of mentees who've gone through the quote unquote Rangan Plan, and they're spread around the world today. They're all very successful. I find that to be very gratifying. Many of them have chosen to create a path for themselves in technology, and they've learned how to ask questions and be inquisitive, not be fearful, not be bashful about anything that goes on, but to engage and contribute. And it's a matter of great pride to see them succeed. So, my wife and I feel like we are in the age old Hastinapur where we have 60 different children who are spread around the world doing good.
So, if you won't mind, can you give us a small sneak peek behind the Rangan Plan?
Well, the Rangan Plan is very simple. We've used this both while we lived in the Bay Area with students from Stanford and here in Southern California with students from UCI. Typically, what we have done is the day a new batch of students comes into these universities in the MBA program, very specifically the MBA program, from India, and they're recognized and they flag themselves as first time out from India. We invite them home and offer our home as a home away from home for them. So it starts with a good meal, a hot meal that's an Indian meal, and with introductions all around, etc. And we throw our home open to them. Soon after they arrive. Typically, they arrive at the beginning of September. Soon after it's Ganesh Chaturthi, they come back and visit with us. We host a very large Diwali in our home where they and their spouses show up. So it's now quite typical to have 125 people in the house to celebrate Diwali for us. And with all the mela that goes around with it. So new friendships are formed, new alliances are formed. They come back to us for career guidance and counseling. We attach them to people that we know in our network in subject areas that may be of interest to them. Somebody may be interested in new product introductions. We make introductions with people who are in marketing. Others may be in finance. We help them get connected with CFOs who are in our network, and so on and so forth. So they find their path in the world through this process, but many a time they also find their life mate in the process. So we are very lucky now to look back and say there are 8 different couples who met in our home, and several of them got married in our home as well.
That's amazing, sir. You also played Cupid in the Rangan Plan.
We don't pay, we enable Cupid to
It
play his
happened. It
game. That's
happened.
all.
It happened in the process. Yes. So, sir, if you were to graduate engineering in 2024, 2025, what advice would you have given your younger self?
That's it's a loaded question. I'm going to unpack it because there are multiple layers to it. So the first layer that I would unpack is, if you want to succeed in any endeavor, you don't have to be a giant. You just need to be the tallest pygmy. So if you have a height advantage of 1 inch as a pygmy, you will forever be 1 inch taller as a pygmy. The important thing is to gain that 1 inch advantage. So as you go through university, when you study, understand where your strengths and your passion lie and gain that 1 inch advantage. And then find a job that aligns with your passion and now your skill. Because from that day forward, you're just having fun and somebody is paying you to have fun. So you're making that 1 inch advantage work in your favor constantly. So that's one layer. The second layer is, to be successful, let's use the paradigm of surfing. To be a good surfer, you just need to find the right tide. You can't surf if the tide is not high. So you got to find the right tide. And once you have the skill of surfing, you'll have a great ride. But you got to find the tide and or have a connection that knows where the tide is up so that you land up there in time to enjoy the surf. Right? That's the second. The third layer is, if you want to succeed, you also want to see where the tide is rising, because a rising tide it lifts every boat. Now the question is, what are you going to do with your boat? Right? And the fourth is, it's got to be in an economy that supports you. The reason I'm here and not with you in Bangalore is because back at the time when I graduated, there was no rising tide in Bangalore. It was dead as a sheet of glass. There was nothing happening. It was a sleepy town. And the United States was the land of opportunity, whereas today it's very different. The ecosystem in India has more startups than probably Silicon Valley does, which is a wonderful thing. So be a part of that and figure out what's your passion, play to your passion, you'll have fun. Success has a higher probability of occurring. There's no certainty of success in life. But if you load the dice in your favor by picking the things that I'm telling you to, then the probability of success is vastly improved. And once you find that pathway, stick to the knitting with integrity, knowing that hard work and integrity eventually are the only payoff you have in life. Monetary gains will come and go, but your reputation will remain intact.
Right. That's wonderful advice, I might say, sir. So, what advice would you give our viewers who are probably currently studying engineering and someone like me who still have 3 more years to go? What advice would you give such audience about, say, career and any other thing?
So, every so often, more often than it used to be, the world is being turned on its head with new technologies. So let's go back to the time that I graduated. It was still the time of mainframes back in 1982. And then the microcomputer was 1983, with IBM PCs becoming widely available. And pretty soon, client server technologies took off. Soon thereafter, the internet took off. Soon thereafter, other technologies that are related to the internet took off, like the cell phone, multimedia capabilities on the cell phone, social media, analytics, cloud technologies, all those took off. They infuse themselves into every aspect of engineering. It doesn't matter whether you're a mechanical engineer or a civil engineer. If you don't know how to use a computer well, you're handicapped. But if you know how to use it well, you have an advantage. That's how you gain that 1 inch that I talked about. Now, as we peer into the future, it is clear in certain ways and cloudy in others. One way in which it is brilliantly clear to me, and here I'm speaking as an expert in AI, is that AI is not only mature, but it is vastly underrated in the long run. So in 10 to 15 years' time, it will have infused every aspect of our life, just like the internet now has. It took longer for the internet, it took 25 years. But with AI, it'll take 10 years, no more than that. No matter who you are, no matter in which field you're studying, my advice to graduating students and studying students is learn to understand AI, better yet, learn to harness AI so that you become better engineers who know how to use AI to your advantage. Again, that'll go back to adding that 1 inch really well.
Yes, that's some really wonderful advice. And yeah, we are at the end of the episode, and I want to thank you for your time here at UVCE Chronicles. And it's been a wonderful conversation, and I personally have learned a lot. So thank you for being on UVCE Chronicles, sir.
I appreciate the opportunity and I wish you very well. Take
Thank
care
you,
of
sir.
yourselves.
Thank you,
Bye
sir.
bye.